So, ladies and gentlemen, please let's put together our hands to welcome Mike Carr to deliver his speech on communication, leadership, and secret superpowers. Mike Carr.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Well, my dear friends, it has been so wonderful and lovely being with all of you. This has been a wonderful weekend for me, a wonderful first time in Australia. You have been welcoming, you have been generous, and I'd like to talk about maybe a couple other stories, share another idea, and then I'm excited for all of us to talk some more before we end. But I will start out with this. Is it possible, is it just maybe possible, that we are doing communication all wrong? Now, you may think that I'm just saving my voice because several of you wore me out in karaoke last night. But actually, I'm just leading up to the punchline that I believe and hope to convince you that real communication begins with listening. So years ago, I got a call from a good friend of mine, and he said, "Hey, I'm beginning the process of selling my company." I said, "Oh, that's great. You have worked for 30 years to this point, and that's a wonderful accomplishment. I applaud you. Thanks for letting me know." He said, "Well, I've got a challenge that I'm hoping you can help with." I said, "Certainly. You've been a good friend. I'm glad to help." He said, "I want to turn my company over to a young man who came and joined me about 10 years ago and has been our CFO. He helped us grow the organization, but I'm worried about it. He just doesn't seem to really connect with our employees. He doesn't seem to connect with our vendors. So would you mind coming in and just sitting down with him and sharing with me your thoughts as a third-party observer?" I said, "Absolutely, be glad to do it." So I hopped on a plane, went over there, came in, set a meeting, sat down with the young CFO. And immediately we hit it off, and he was very gregarious, very genial. And he said, and I asked him, I said, "Tell me about yourself." And he said, "Well, I played college baseball. I grew up, and I went to a school over here, paid for my own college, but I played baseball throughout college, and I really believe that sports is something that I look for in employees. In fact, I try to use sports analogies as much as I can, and that's how I try to get messaging across." And I said to him, "Well, not everybody played sports. Do you find that there's some pushback on that? Like, for example, I played soccer from very young all the way, through almost college, through late high school, and I believe in that. But I run into so many people in audiences that don't have that sports experience, especially women on your team. Do you find that might possibly be part of the problem, that your message is not getting through?" He said, "Well, no, I don't think that at all." I said, I think that sports is incredibly important because it shows drive, it shows, and he pointed out several other things, and he said, "Well, for example, did you ever play sports?" I went back into the CEO and I said, "I found your problem. Your CFO, once he is challenged one little bit, he stops listening to what the other person is saying, and he starts building the case in his head for the next thing he is going to say." And I said, it would take someone who is incredibly gracious, for that not to be a little off-putting. Listening is a superpower that I found that most leaders don't really embrace. And we as Toastmasters are susceptible to that because we come in and we teach how to talk, how to develop a message and deliver that message. And that is highly, highly important. And a lot of leaders do that very, very well. But just like when Charlie asked, how many are extroverts, how many are introverts? A lot of times the introverts in the group, whenever I will go sit on the factory floor with an organization, I will have those introverts say, I just don't really feel seen by the leader because I'm not stepping up and saying, hey, well, I'm delivering this great message. But just like in this room where we teach talking, the majority were introverts. And that's so much even more true in our organizations. For example, if you look at the DISC personality test, the D-dominant personality test, 50% of leaders around the world are Ds. Ds make up 3% of the population. So when I tell that to Ds, they say, of course, I was pre-designed to be the leader. Maybe. My experience is that Ds just kick and scratch and scrape until they become the leader or they go somewhere else. But I digress. Now, I'm part D, part I. But let's just, it doesn't really matter how a D gets there or if they should be there. Ds are 50% of leaders. They're only 3% of the population. That means that up to 97% of their teams speak a different language than they do. And Ds wonder why they cannot coalesce their team. They wonder why their message falls flat or is not motivating to their team. Listening is the key ingredient that is missing there. And all Ds have to do, all we as leaders have to do is adjust our messaging to the other personality styles on our team. And all that takes is saying, hey, tell me about yourself. Tell me about your growing up, and really hearing, because individuals give us clues whenever we're listening for it. LinkedIn, over the last many years, has done studies and asked questions of organizations, companies, nonprofits, education institutions around the world, saying, what is it that you need to really accomplish your mission? And what continues to come up, regardless of culture, regardless of parts in the world, communication skills. Artificial intelligence is, we've talked about it, is taking over all the technical stuff. Doesn't really matter, because what is standing in the way of accomplishment, companies continue and organizations continue to tell LinkedIn, are the communication skills to be able to get that taken care of. Ron Williams was not the first choice to take over Aetna, the huge insurance company. In fact, the Aetna board first tapped someone else, and they failed. So they tapped a second person, and they failed. They tapped a third person, a fourth person. Ron Williams was arguably the last possible person. He was fifth choice. But Williams turned the company completely around, made them profitable, made them extremely profitable, and everyone wanted to know why. I was hearing an interview that Ron Williams was doing with Bloomberg, and the interviewer asked him, if you could go tell leaders what is one thing that you should do, or what is one thing you would have done more of at Aetna, Williams answered, listen more. Because what he did that none of the other four previous to him did is he went and sat on the factory floor. He went to line workers who did not get heard by the CEO and said, what do you think should be done? All of the other CEOs, they followed the line of leadership, and they said, go ask your downline. And you know how that works, is that answers get political as they get filtered up. He went directly to every single person in every single job and asked, what do you think? What are you seeing? What looks good? Ask all of these questions. And he said simply in the interview, I got all of the data that I needed to, from the top, turn the company around. And the Bloomberg podcaster asked him, why don't you think the other 4 did that? And William said, he was befuddled. He said, I just don't know. It was not rocket science. It was not hard. All I had to do, listen more. Remember this guy? We as humans, this is all we want. This is all we want. I heard, so the interviewer on one of the contests was asking, what's one of your favorite quotes? You were the one who was asking a favorite quote. I thought, what would I write on that? One of my current favorite quote is from an American jurist on the Supreme Court, Oliver Wendell Holmes, and he said, I would not give a fig for the simplicity on this side of complexity, but I would give my right arm for the simplicity found on the far side of complexity. This picture here is that simplicity on the far side of complexity. We as humans are immensely complex, but in many ways we are extremely simple. And to the degree that you and I, as leaders, can make somebody feel like this little guy, it's not that we're working to manipulate. We help someone feel seen, then they feel safe enough to tell us, hey, this is the way I view the world, and then we can show them how our agenda or our organization aligns with theirs. And then we are in alignment. Then we move together. The whole world right now, and we have an opportunity, the whole world is saying, hey, look at me, everybody, look at me. I'm at the District 73 conference in Melbourne, look at me. Everyone is doing that. We can zig where the rest of the world is zagging. We can be differentiated by saying, hey, look at you. Tell me about you. What keeps you up at night? What makes you excited? And we can make people feel this way. And we also really learn to love these wonderful humans that we're around. You do Google Trends? You familiar with Google Trends? You can go into Google Trends and you can put in different concepts and see how they're Googled over time. I put in leaders listening. Look where it was. It started in 2004. Look where it was. Now it's risen somewhat. And then I believe it's with all of kind of the change in political figures that we've seen around the world, that all of a sudden there has been this desire for us to say, hey, who are some leaders who listen? But watch this drop off right there. It spikes and then it drops off. I believe that drop off there's a second component to the listening piece. We who are being led, we need to really recognize when a leader does ask us our opinion, that it doesn't mean that we get our way. I had an assistant one time, and we were talking a lot about listening, asking a lot of questions, and she had offered the same solution 3 times in a row, and the leader of our organization didn't take it, went a different direction. And as I walked by, we were talking about this, and she said, leaders are supposed to listen. You know, I've said this, and if the organization would just do this, then I think we'd be just fine. And I just heard it come out of my mouth. I said, well, but that's the balance, right? Is that if we want leaders to listen to us, it doesn't mean that they're going to accept our ideas. If they decide to go a different way, then we have been heard. We need to line up behind the leader and say, here's the program, now my job is to execute. So we have a dance, we have an agreement with leaders. As leaders, if we listen, as followers, we then share our ideas, but we have to be okay whenever a decision is made and the organization goes opposite of what we think. it does. And we support that leader. Just a personal example, during a time I told you that I was working with UBS for a period of time. And one of my big jobs was recruiting. And I think that this might speak to where we're building clubs, where we're talking with individuals, maybe in our leadership structures, where we're asking individuals who have done something one way for a long time, and we're asking them to change and try something new. Whenever I first became a leader in the private bank at UBS, I had all my colleagues and those above me say, well, what you need to do to recruit other advisory businesses into your office is you go tell the UBS story. You just tell the UBS story. Here's what this is, and it's the UBS story. And I started doing some of that, and I had this wonderful curmudgeon of a guy who ran a huge business. I think it was at Morgan Stanley. And I started telling the UBS story, and he leaned forward and he said, do you know how many times I've heard this? I said, this is the first? He said, no, more times than I can count. Do you know that I don't care about the UBS story? Because I care about my story. I care about where I'm taking my business, my goals. I don't care about the UBS story. Did me the best favor he ever could have. So then, in the next meeting, I came out and I sat down with someone and I said, tell me your story. He said, what do you mean tell me my story? I said, well, can you just tell me why did you get into this business? What do you want to do? And they lined out all what they really wanted to do, and even to the point of saying, we want to take off every December, the full December, we want to take off every December. Well, that was anathema for managers, but that's what they really wanted to do. And so then there were a few points of commonality. I said, you could probably do these things better in my office than in your current office. So essentially, I tried to hear their story and then tell them where the UBS story aligned with what their goals were. That was my first big recruit that came in. And it took a couple of years. But from then on, that's the way I approached recruiting. And that is, if you're finding, if what you're doing is working for you, I would say don't let me muddy the water. But if you're wanting your results as you are recruiting leaders or individuals or trying to get your club or your organization to do something a little bit different, we might start with hearing that person's story first, hearing that person's agenda. And then if our organization and our agenda lines up, telling them, this is how I believe that we can help you get there a little bit more. And if there's no alignment, then that's really good to know up front than later on. This guy here, best listener I've ever met in my entire life. That's my dad. And I got to grow up with a guy who, if you haven't figured it out yet, I'm a talker. I'm like her. She was a talker. My dad would come in and he would sit down by my bedside every night as I was getting ready to go to bed. And he'd say, hey, tell me about your day. Tell me what you're thinking about. And I just start, I met this girl, but she didn't like me. And then I saw her with this other guy, but he's a jerk. And then I went to class and on and on and on and on. And I would see my dad every now and again. I could tell he was really tired, but he would just sit there and he would nod. And I thought everybody grew up that way until I got out of the house and I discovered, no, that my dad would just listen to me yammer on and do that. Later on, we would be at meetings like this, if my dad and I were in the same place. And I'd look around and I couldn't find him. But I'd end up seeing him off in a corner, usually, and it could be with the most high-powered CEO in the room, or it could be with the person who was doing very little. But he would be standing. Usually that person would be talking, and my dad would be in this position, just listening and just nodding. people loved my dad. My dad was an elementary school, primary school teacher and principal. My dad never had a big company. He never accomplished a lot the way the world measures that. But in terms of relationships and family, it was huge. It was massive. A few years ago, I was on a phone call, and my sister had texted me and said, hey, you really need to be on this call. And I jumped on, and it was a doctor telling my dad, you've got 2 months to live. So I hopped on a plane, and I headed toward Tulsa, Oklahoma, where he lived. And in that short hour flight, I'm trying to develop all the things I want to say to him. I want to say the right thing. I landed, and I came in his house, and I headed over to him sitting in his chair, and he was already shrinking, physically. And he stood up and he threw his arms out, and I went and I hugged him, and I started to try to say what I thought I'd say. I couldn't get going. And he sensed it, and he just patted me, and he said, hey, no, this is not bad news. I have lived the life I wanted to live. And so for the next 2 months, we just talked and we shared and had a chance to really pour out everything that I wanted to say. And then I went back to Tulsa, and there was kind of a last weekend, and I got there, and my oldest daughter was flying in, and I had this sense once I got there, this could be it. So he had a hospital bed set up in his bedroom, and we sat there and we talked, and I talked through things, and after I was all talked out, I just looked at him, and he was leaning back with his eyes closed and kind of a little smile on his face. And I asked him a question that I absolutely knew the answer to. I knew that I knew the answer. And I said, Dad, you're the best listener that I've ever met in my entire life. Did you just naturally, you're a good listener, or were there certain steps that you went through? And I knew he was going to say, no, I'm just a naturally curious person, and I've always just been a good listener. So he leans back and he says, no, there are steps I go through. And I said, Dad, here I am, 50 plus years. I said, you've known me a long time. Why haven't you ever told me this? Leaned back, and he just laughed. He just kind of grinned, and he said, well, you never asked. So I said, well, Dad, I'm asking now. So the next several hours, he just talked about what he does to purposefully listen actively to people. And that's how I'd like to spend the rest of our time here. With the first several steps that my dad said he used. And the first is, he said, I never was afraid of the silence. I never was afraid of silence. So, let me ask you, when I came right up here and I sat here and just stared at you quietly for a while, how long did that feel? Forever, right? That was maybe 30 seconds. But we are afraid of the silence. Now, we didn't used to be. It used to be that we would start talking with one another, and one person would say something, and then there was quiet while the other person inculcated what was just said, developed what they were going to say next, and then would speak. But then came along radio. And what is the number one rule of radio? No dead air. That's right. Because we can sell advertising into that space, and if there's dead air, that's lost revenue. So everyone, since radio came along, said, no dead air, because we want to sell the most advertising, make the most money. And so what we started hearing was one after another, and then came along political commentary television. And so they don't even wait until one person finishes. They jump in and it's back and forth. And we sit back and say, oh, we're in the Coliseum watching the Lions fight. And we stoke that and we start acting the same way. We have all grown up with that. That looks normal to us, but it is not. It is not normal. And what my dad said was, I never was afraid of the silence. I would ask a question and someone would answer and they would come to the end of their sentence and I would just say, silence. And then usually the person would fill that silence with an even deeper answer. It built rapport, and someone was able to feel safe with my dad because they knew he wasn't going to jump in and start, giving them an answer, giving them a solution, but he would just listen, not being afraid of the silence. And so we can practice that. And I will tell you, my friends, it will feel weird, super weird, but you will find that people will fill that silence with an even deeper answer, and then you find out more who they are. If you're not comfortable just staring at them and nodding, you can say, and this has become more popular, thankfully, is tell me more about that. I love that question. I love that phrase as that came into our common lexicon. Tell me more about that. What else? You can come up with a number of questions, but if you give someone a little time, a lot of times all they need is just a minute to think further about what they want to say, and then you learn more about this beautiful human standing in front of you, not being afraid of the silence. A second thing is, I don't know if you've heard this, I hear this in leadership circles all the time, and it just drives me crazy, is you never want to ask a question you don't already know the answer to. I just, pardon my language, but that is just bullshit. It makes me furious because if I already know the answer to a question and I'm going to ask you to get you to tell me that, it borders on manipulation, and at worst, I don't learn anything. The second thing my dad told me is, I always want to ask the question I don't know the answer to. And usually it sounds like, so, what is the scariest thing about this subject that you're talking to me about? What is the scariest thing to you? And then someone has to say, let me think about that. Give them the space, and then you get a real answer and have a real conversation. So my dad was constantly asking me things that made me have to think and make me have to wonder about. Now, I've had feedback from audiences and they say, how does that not feel like interrogation? And that's a good question. Practice. Practice and genuine curiosity. Are you seeing a theme running throughout the 3 days? That curiosity, actual real curiosity, gets us a long way into really actively being the kinds of humans that can interact and can work well together. But genuine curiosity and also practice, and also just even saying, hey, I hope this doesn't sound like I'm trying to interrogate you, and that helps. But always asking the question that I don't know the answer to. The third one was asking the question that you would like to be asked. Asking the question you would like to be asked. There were some interesting things about my dad. My dad dated a woman all through high school. Then when he went off to be in the Navy, she married his brother. That's a super interesting subject, isn't it? My dad spent time in the Navy in Hawaii, and every day would finish his work and would go out and play on the beach with a bunch of his friends. Sounds pretty interesting to me. My dad went out with my mom the first time, and he said to his friends, I'm going to marry her because I didn't have to say a word. Interesting things. These are the kinds of things, if it were me, that I would fill the space of silence to say, hey, this is an interesting thing about me. Instead, what my dad would do is, his high school girlfriend married his brother. That would be something interesting that he would like to be asked about. But instead, what he would do is say, so tell me about your family. Anything weird in your family? Every family has weird stuff. Anything weird in your family? What's the craziest thing? Who's the craziest relative you have? What's the most interesting story? Where have you all grown up? What are some of the weird traditions that you all do? What are some of the wonderful traditions? Tell me about your Christmas. Any tension? And then they say, well, what about you? You'd say, oh yeah, I see my old girlfriend kissing my brother all the time. But by that time, the other person has been able to talk about their family and their traditions and all the things they love. Second thing is, my dad was in Hawaii with the Navy. So he says to someone, instead of saying, hey, I've been to Hawaii in the Navy, he'd say, so what are the places you've traveled? Have you ever had an assignment that was interesting? What did you do while you were there? What's been your favorite place to travel? Oh, really? While you were there, did you ever get out in nature? What did you do in nature? Who did you do it with? All of those things that if someone was curious, he would enjoy being asked about. He turned and would ask that. And about career. You can go on and on. Think about the interesting things about you. And you can turn that to ask someone else a general question about them. And it's just wonderful what you find out about people. People are super interesting, have super interesting lives and stories, and you get to be the beneficiary of all of it. So many of you have come up and said, oh, thank you so much for flying all the way over here. Are you kidding me? You Aussies have the best stories. It is and you have been so gracious to share so many of them with me. I've just been loving it. I've been calling my wife and just saying, oh, there's this great stuff, and I heard this, and it's amazing. It makes life really fun. The way I see it isn't necessarily the way you see it. The fourth thing that my dad told me was, I always want to admire and respect the differences. Always want to do that. He voted Republican, my mother voted Democrat. He was a Republican as a public educator. That was, in my part of the world, that was a unicorn. I don't know if he would have been a Republican today in America, but he would have been in no man's land. But he always, when he would be at the back of the room really listening to someone, then usually it was because they had a very different opinion than he did. And he did not feel the need to step in and convince them of his opinion. In fact, he got curious about theirs. Oh, okay, you're a socialist. So talk to me about that. How did you get there? Did you grow up, your parents there? So how do you believe that is borne out? Where have you seen that? All of these things. And many times he would never get around to giving what he thought, but it didn't matter because something more important was happening. He was learning and he was building connection with another human. I would suggest that we will get back to this someday. But I would also suggest that the world would be so much better if we looked at the world saying, he, they, she don't necessarily need to see it the way I see it. We can be in a relationship, be curious, and I'll go first. And that's what my dad did. And again, people loved my dad. This is our big family. I'm trying to think if there's anybody missing there. Maybe. May is in a new relationship, but she hasn't put her on the Christmas card yet. So but this is all the group. So my kids are very, very different. This is my wife, Julie. Then the oldest is there, Madison. She's the one who drew mustaches on everyone. Second oldest is McKenna. She's the one who plucked the chin hair out of her grandmother's on Thanksgiving Day. Her husband is Yutaka, and these are the grandbabies right now. This one is double. She is Japanese and Scotch-Irish. And so Yutaka grew up in Japan. He can be very traditionally Japanese. They go back to Japan a lot. Her personality is very loud Scotch-Irish. So they land in a Japanese airport and they tow her all the way there. They say, now remember, everyone is quiet. Everyone needs to, especially on the train. And she says, okay. And they land at the airport and she runs out the jetway and says, I'm in Japan! And the look of disapproval that she gets from everybody, she just does not care. So that'll be interesting. More stories to come about this. Open the PowerPoint. Oh, okay, thank you. That's right. Okay, there we go. More stories to come. This is Hikari, and then her little sister Kotomi. So who's third? I forget. Justice. And don't start asking me their ages or, I mean, they have the audacity to change those things every year. That is unacceptable. But my oldest son, Justice, his wife, Lily. I missed Al and Maddie are married, and they're proud parents of a grand dog, and named Mrs. Dog or Cashew, depending on the day. And the twins are right here. Mercy, we talked about her. She had a stroke at birth and then learned to walk and then dance, and then became the comedian. Her twin brother, Jake, who is really is such a sweet guy. More stories about him in the future. But then there's Jairus. And Jairus may be the most like my dad. Just that super sweet individual. As we're wrapping up our time here together, we've talked about this weekend, we started out just talking about time management and how do we build communities. And I suggested to you that maybe hats, being here, asking for help, trying things because we don't know what will work or not. And we just try a lot of things, and some of those things work. Always with a mind with S, service. Then yesterday we talked about curiosity being that missing step, saying, as life comes along, yes, and. Remember, I'm the one who didn't want any of these people. So I don't say that to my children, but I do tell them that they were all love children, which icks all of them out. I'm surprised. I'm surprised if any of them have children. I'm surprised if any of them have sex. They're just going, Dad told me too much. I don't want to know. But curiosity, yes, and we can ask ourselves, what can I learn from this? And then if we're having a hard time with that, we can turn curiosity inward, saying, how am I feeling? And really explore that. Some of those silly questions like, where is it in my body? What color is it? What sound does it make? But getting curious about our own strong emotions that help those dissipate so that we can move forward, to saying things like, what could I do with this to create something beautiful? Like what you all are doing in your clubs and in your district every day of every year, creating beauty that is becoming even more important as this world changes. And Toastmasters is right in the flow of what makes us human and what we get to practice all the time. And then today, hopefully listening, that you might rediscover or visit again this idea that if I listen first, then this person gives me all the information I need to help them grow through our organization. And then I know how I can lead this person, and I know how they want to be led, because we all really do want to be led. That's part of the issue that we have in our world right now. Part of the issue that we have in our country is our country, I say our country in America, I think Americans are clamoring for someone in the middle of all of this uncertainty to say, hey, follow me, I know the way. The downside of that is sometimes those people are either psychotic or narcissistic or don't know what they're talking about, or all the above. Not naming names, but I digress. But if we listen, then beautiful things can happen. And I would ask you let's keep this conversation going. There's this Substack community that I have. You'll see the little orange Substack around or QR codes posted around that Sue was kind enough to put up there. There is, if you join the community, it will say something about a donation. Just put no pledge. The bottom area is no pledge. There, if you want to join the paid part of that later, then you can see on there what the differences are. But the fun thing about this community is for about a year now in conferences, I've had a lot of people joining that, and we just get together. It's my attempt to do training for Toastmasters where we can't do a lot of it right here. And so for those that want to stay in touch, we get together once, twice a month. On the paid version, it'll be more like once a week. But we'll do posting and answer questions, and I'll try to do group coaching in a very broad area. You can message me through the app if you have any questions, and I'll probably write a post about it, or we can just talk about it. I'm glad to help if I can. Time is my biggest constraint. If we had no constraints there, you and I would spend a few years together really getting to know each other, but God hasn't given us that time. So this is just an effort to stay in touch. So if you want to join, no pressure. If you want to join, love to have you. And if you don't want to join, then hey, that's all right. Go with God. But I'll end here with Jairus. This was Jairus when he was younger. He is a weird kid. Now, weird, in my family lexicon, is one of the highest compliments you can have, because everybody's like everybody, right? What does weird mean? Weird means that I'm set apart. Weird means that I'm a little different. Weird means that I think a little differently than others. Weird means that I talk a little differently than others. And that weirdness, I've always viewed as a superpower. I have not been as weird as I want to be, although those of you who were at karaoke last night would disagree with me. Jairus, from a very early stage, he was active, highly interested in so many things, and very, very quiet. But you could tell he was just observing everything. And as he got older, he would hear somebody say something, and then months later would go back to them and he would ask again, hey, you talked about this. Are you okay? Is that okay? Such a great listener. Now, Jairus looks like this. He is my dancer. He is my Uber artist. He got his degree in business. He reads all kinds of philosophy. Some days he's a capitalist. Some days he's a socialist. Some days he says that all of those systems should just burn. He is the kind of kid that we have bulk pickup day around our house, and wherever everybody puts their trash out on the corner, he will go around the neighborhood and just pick up pieces of trash that he then takes in our backyard and will turn into a piece of art that he'll either sell online or he'll douse with lighter fluid and set on fire. Very eclectic, wonderfully weird individual. And he is one of the best listeners that I have ever met. And his friends love him because when he gets in a room, he will go from person to person to person. And he won't say it out loud, but he will, with his full personhood, say, hey, who are you? Let me see you. And he has a beautiful life. He has better relationships than anyone I've ever known because he just loves people. He loves them by seeing them. And he embodies a lot of the things that we talk about today. My time is coming to an end. I will be glad to answer any questions that you might toss out, or we can, actually I think maybe would you rather me answer questions, or we can wrap early and I can just hang around and ask questions? I threw that at him. I had not. I saw these two hands right here. That's a beautiful jacket. Why don't you yell out? Yes, and I'm glad to answer.
My question is, you know how you said you said that when you ask someone a question and give them time to answer, and then they pause, or that you pause, and then what if they don't elaborate on the story but instead ask you a question back?
So let's role play it. Are you good with that?
No.
Thank you for your honesty. Anybody else want to role play that with me?
I can do it.
Okay, I heard I heard over here first. So let me make sure I understand. You said that I asked them a question, and then I pause, and he doesn't answer my question, but asks me a question back. Okay. So, how long have you lived in Australia?
How long have you lived in America?
I have lived in America now almost 59 years, but I was born there. Were you born in Australia?
I might have been. Where were you born exactly in America?
I was born in Redlands, California. Have you ever been California? Have you ever seen that area?
Maybe. Have you been to Antarctica?
That's fair. But does that help? So in reality, if this continued the way it was, then I'm going to kind of get a sense that he's not yet comfortable enough with me to share deeply, and so I will probably share something that, I was born in California, but then my parents moved back to Oklahoma because they weren't making a lot of money and it was cheaper to live in Oklahoma. So then I may share something that's a little more vulnerable or transparent with hope that maybe that gives him a safe space to share more the next time. But it's a great question, and does that give you kind of a sense of, and you're good, thank you.
Thanks.
But I'm not answering anything else. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I'm sure most of us here have watched this program, Undercover Boss.
Oh yeah,
in the
yeah.
United States. So it's been, it used to be very, very popular. Now they're just running reruns and reruns and reruns. But I wouldn't mind your opinion. I'm sure it's a contrived show, but it's great to see a CEO going down undercover and talking to the coalface employees, learning their stories and their personal trials and tribulations. And then, what worries me is you've got a company of 2,000 or 3,000 employees, and they hand out all this money to 3 or 4 so-called deserving employees. That could work against the CEO, couldn't it?
It could. That's right. And my personal opinion is I invest in a lot of those companies myself and for clients, and I think if I know what CEO pay is, and I think they got to get thick skin. I think you're getting paid enough to go hear the hard truths is my frank opinion. and I think it's really good for them. That's one of the, that's one of the problems to me with these non-flat organizations is, and I've experienced some of that myself, is you get a degree or two away from, you have to rely on your people, but I think we always have to keep in mind that the people just under us, they're all clamoring for the next position up, and we've got to do workarounds. We've got to work with that, and it's never a perfect situation. But I do love that show, and the ones that just I'll have to laugh at the most, the CEOs who are just flummoxed. They just can't believe that it's this bad. I'm going, Undercover Boss. That is right? Undercover Boss. Yeah.
Okay.
What else? Let me look at. If I can, would y'all be open to doing a big selfie before we end? Is that good? And am I right that I've got 10 more minutes? Okay, I'll keep an eye on there. I want to answer other questions, and maybe right at the end, if you can move forward, and we'll take a big selfie, and then we'll jump. We'll all jump together. Yeah. That'll be a good way to end. 5 minutes. Okay. All right. 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mike. Great session. I have a question. You spoke about active listening, and active listening in leadership, in workplace, and active listening is very important in family as well. My question is there any technique, because consciously I know I have to do active listening, but subconsciously sometimes active listening switches off. So
For
any
me too.
technique, any help, that'll help me.
Practice, is one. Now, I'm in that same boat. I mean, here I am preaching this, right? But I am sometimes one of the biggest hypocrites. And if you're honest, some of you this weekend, you've seen it. You know it. I'm a hypocrite. I've started monologuing on what I've done, and I catch myself. I'm not actively listening. So we have to all give ourselves some grace, right? So I would give you grace saying, I'm an offender as well. And so one, we should give ourselves grace. Two is I have this great teacher in my life who says we always can begin again. And uses the example that says if I'm going to go to the gym and I want to work out for an hour, and after 50 minutes, 50 minutes, I've wasted time. So many times we say, well, that was a waste of time and leave earlier. But he says, no, we can just begin again and have the best 10 minutes of workout that we've ever had. So extrapolate that over to our listening. I think the more we think about that and remind ourselves, I want to actively listen. When we fail once, then we walk away and say, I didn't listen very well that time. Next time I want to begin again. And then in the very next conversation or the very next sentence, then try to maybe employ some of the things we've talked about today. But yeah, let's give ourselves a lot of grace, because we're all on the path working toward better, but we can just begin again. Does that help? Okay. Yes, sir.
That's our last question.
Oh, did you find your car?
No, I haven't heard back yet.
Oh, our friend had his car stolen last night, and yeah, so I am honored and surprised you're here today, not hunting for your car. So
Got a yes
my
and
prayer
right?
for you is they will, or someone find it, quickly.
But my question is, it's not about my car.
Sorry.
Shows you were listening though. But my question is, I find active listening is really useful for oneself. But if you're talking to someone and you notice they're not listening, they're waiting for their turn to talk. Is it good to continue that conversation and can you encourage curiosity in someone else in a conversation? Or do you need to take a step back and try a different tact?
Let me say that back to make sure I understand it. And that's a good question. That's a hard one. Did I get it right that you said, if I'm talking to someone and I recognize they're really not listening to me, they're just jumping in, or they're just thinking about their next answer. That's a challenge. That's a real challenge. Let me think, and I hadn't thought of that. I'm gonna have to think about this for a second, maybe think out loud. Why did you say, Jar? Oh, we're going to role play it again? Sure, let's do it. Yes, I think I continue to have that conversation, but just recognize there's a bit of a block here. It's really not going to go below a certain depth. And so what I may do is just ask more and more. If I'm not going to be listened to anyway, it really doesn't matter what I say. So then why say anything? Why not just, I don't want to interrogate the person, but I'll probably view that as an opportunity to find out more about them and just pray that someday they hear this message. Does that help? Okay. I'm going to check my time and all right. Can we do a cell? I've got one question at the back. Is it a short one? I can probably answer a short one.
My name is Nola. Welcome to Australia. You talk about a pathway that we are heading toward, and I hear that all the time. But I am 82 years of age. I've got a son who is a CEO, and he tells me that AI is going to destroy the world and that the jobs will not be there. Do you have an opinion on that? Because I am going to my grave terrified, and I have been an optimistic, grateful woman all of my life, and I don't want that at the end of my life.
Yeah. I do have an opinion on that. With all respect to your son, I believe he's wrong. That I don't see. So I heard the same things about AI. I heard the same things about the internet in the late 90s that I heard about AI now. That it would decimate jobs. I'll make it personal. I was starting as a financial planner, financial manager, and I had someone come up to me and say, I'm so sorry that you just came into this business now because the internet's going to wipe it out. And it makes sense, right? If I can go to the internet and say, here's my tolerance for risk, what investment should I own right now? And the internet spits out an answer. That's existed now for almost 30 years. But the financial advisory profession, thank you, profession has only grown. Why? Well, it's because an example that there's a family that sold part of a technology company, and they came in and they said, I'm asking the internet, should I buy, sell, or hold? And I have Nobel Prize winners. I have a Nobel Prize winner who says buy, a Nobel Prize winner that says hold, and a Nobel Prize winner that says sell. I don't have the knowledge to parse that apart to know what wisdom is. That's one example that AI is coming along. I have another client who's high up in Lenovo, and he said, I'm seeing technology that has existed for 10 years that now they're calling AI because they can attract more investment. So I see it as being a good partner, but we have enough. We've been around for, billions of years? And depending on who you ask, I guess, right? And we have a hard time being human. I think artificial intelligence. But let's assume for a minute your son is right. All we have then is right now. There's nothing I can do about it if he's right. Except maybe I can march against it, I can protest, but you and I both, you may outlive me. We have today. And I would suggest we can't lose sight of that whether AI takes over or whether it does not, then and I can learn from you on that. So that's a broad answer. If you want to talk more about it, then I have opinions. I don't know if I'm right. Can we take a selfie? Okay. Do you guys mind? Those of you that want to come forward, we kind of fill in this area, and because I'm not sure I can that my phone will see all the way to the back. All right. Is everybody where they want to be? All right. Wow, I don't have, y'all are so wonderful. Okay. Here we go. Oh, that's so cool. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 1. Oh, wait. I got to get a video of that. Sorry. Okay. What do I say? Aussie, 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 I was going to say? Okay. Oh, that's not it. Aussie, Aussie, Aussie! Aussie, Aussie, Aussie! Oh, before you go anywhere, can I tell you from all seriousness, I love every one of you. Thank you very much for inviting me in. I'm so glad we're family. Oh, yeah.